60 minutes. That's all it took. 1 hour after tickets went on sale for the DC Open final, Rock Creek Park Tennis Center was essentially spoken for. And here's what made the moment even more remarkable: the player driving that frenzy wasn't American. She was a 21-year-old Filipina, unseeded, ranked number 28 in the world, and her name was Alex Eala. By the end of the weekend, she wouldn't leave Washington with the championship trophy, but what happened before that final may have changed the way the tennis world looks at her forever. In the semifinal, the scoreboard told the story in cold, simple numbers. Eala defeated Naomi Osaka 6-4, 6-2. But the reaction afterward told an even bigger story. Osaka, a four-time Grand Slam champion and former world number 1, sat down after the loss and said of Eala, "She's incredible. I think she's a star." For a player who had just been beaten, those were powerful words. And to understand why they mattered so much, you have to rewind 7 days, because Alex Eala did not arrive in Washington looking like the obvious favorite to take over the tournament. She entered the DC Open without a seed next to her name and without having played a hard-court match in nearly 2 weeks following her Wimbledon round of 16 run. Her previous WTA final had ended painfully at Eastbourne the year before, where she lost a championship tiebreak 12-10 and came within 2 points of making history. That kind of loss can follow a young player around. It can become the match everybody references whenever pressure starts building again. And when Eala arrived at Rock Creek Park, she wasn't even traveling with her full usual team. Her fitness coach wasn't there. Her travel coach wasn't there. Joan Bosch was the lone coach in her corner, trying to guide her through difficult conditions, swirling winds, and a draw that looked less like a tournament bracket and more like an obstacle course. First came Zheng Qinwen, an Olympic gold medalist. Then 7th seed Leylah Fernandez, a former US Open finalist. After that came 2nd seed Alina Svitolina, the defending champion in Washington. And if Eala somehow survived all of that, Naomi Osaka was waiting in the semifinals for Grand Slam titles, former world number 1, one of the biggest names in modern women's tennis. Every round demanded something different from Eala. The first tested whether she could shake off rust. The next tested her nerve. Then came tactical discipline. Then star power and pressure. No Filipina had ever navigated a week like this on the way to a WTA 500 final because no Filipina had ever reached one before. The tension started immediately against Zheng. After their 3-set battle, Zheng briefly shook Eala's hand and walked away, and the moment quickly made the rounds online. Some tennis fans pointed out that Zheng tends to handle losses in a similar fashion, so the clip shouldn't be treated as proof of some personal issue between the two players. Still, it added another little layer of drama to a tournament that was already beginning to feel different. On court, Eala had a much bigger problem to solve. She dropped the first set 4-6. For a player coming off a short break from competition, the rust was obvious early. But instead of fading, she adjusted while the match was happening. She took the second set 6-4 and then completely took control in the third, winning it 6-1. Whatever rust had been there in the opening hour disappeared. Then came Leylah Fernandez, and this may have been the match that changed the entire emotional direction of Eala's week. Eala won the opening set 6-2, but in the second she fell behind 1-5. Fernandez was one game away from forcing a deciding set. This was exactly the kind of moment when memories of Eastbourne could have crept back in. Eala had already lived through the pain of being inches away from a title and watching it disappear. Now she was facing another momentum swing, another match threatening to slip away. But instead of letting it happen, Eala ripped off 6 straight games. She dragged the set into a tiebreak and dominated the tiebreak 7-1, closing out the match 6-2, 7-6. Think about the difference. At Eastbourne, she had been 2 points away from a championship and lost. In Washington, she found herself staring at a dangerous comeback from Fernandez and simply refused to let the match get away. That was growth happening right in front of everybody. Then came defending champion Alina Svitolina, and this time there was almost no suspense. Eala didn't merely survive. She controlled the match, winning 6-3, 6-4 and recording her 6th top 10 victory of the 2026 season. For Filipino tennis fans who had spent years insisting that Eala's ranking didn't fully reflect her level, this was the kind of week they had been waiting for. The ranking had always been treated as the scoreboard of her development. Washington was beginning to suggest the ranking might actually be chasing her level instead. And then came Naomi Osaka. This was supposed to be the ultimate test. Osaka is one of the defining hardcourt players of her generation. 2 Australian Open titles. 2 US Open titles. A former world number 1. A player whose power, serve, and first strike tennis can make opponents feel like they're defending from the opening ball. But the numbers from the semi-final did not look like the statistics of a lucky upset. They looked like control. Osaka won only 59% of her first serve points. Eala created 12 breakpoint opportunities and converted 4 of them. On her own serve, Eala won 71% of her first serve points and an extraordinary 83% behind her second serve. She wasn't hanging on and hoping Osaka missed. She was winning the important exchanges. She was attacking. She was serving with confidence. She was taking the match away from one of the most accomplished players in the sport. The final score was 6-4, 6-2, and Rock Creek Park exploded. This was a WTA 500 tournament in Washington, D.C., but the atmosphere sounded closer to a major Filipino sporting event. The crowd wasn't simply cheering for Eala. It had transformed the building around her. Filipino sports reports said roughly 80% of final ticket buyers were Filipino, with tickets disappearing in about an hour. And Jessica Pegula, the world number 3 and the American who would meet Eala in the final, noticed. Pegula joked publicly about looking around and wondering where everybody had come from, pointing out that she was the American player, yet the crowd seemed to be arriving for Eala. It wasn't really a complaint. It was recognition of what had happened. Alex Eala had walked into an American tournament and somehow created a home court atmosphere thousands of miles from the Philippines. And then Osaka added the moment that elevated the week beyond wins and losses. After being eliminated, she called Eala an amazing player. She said Eala was incredible. She called her a star. She described her as an inspiration and said she enjoyed hearing Eala speak because of the things she says. Coming from a 4-time Grand Slam champion, that carries weight. Osaka has faced nearly every type of opponent imaginable. She knows what elite-level tennis looks like. She knows what stardom looks like. She has lived inside the pressure that comes with becoming more than just an athlete. So when someone with Osaka's resume looks at a 21-year-old opponent who just beat her and publicly uses the word star, people around the sport listen. And that is why the 1-hour sellout matters beyond a single weekend. It isn't just a fun attendance statistic. It's evidence that Eala's appeal can move tickets in the United States. Tournament directors notice that. Sponsors notice that. Broadcasters notice that. The WTA notices that. Suddenly, a Filipina player isn't simply bringing viewers from the Philippines. She is bringing an international fan base into arenas in North America and turning ordinary tour stops into events. That has real value in professional sports. And the timing couldn't be more interesting. The National Bank Open comes almost immediately afterward in Canada, while Eala is projected to climb to a new career-high ranking, possibly as high as number 25, with her position in the WTA race to Riyadh also moving toward the top 15. Then, only weeks later, comes the US Open in New York. And for the first time in Philippine tennis history, the possibility of a Filipina entering a Grand Slam as a seeded player has become real. It's a remarkable line to trace. A 14-year-old leaving home to train in Mallorca. Years of development away from the spotlight. Painful losses. Slow ranking progress. Breakthrough wins. A championship opportunity slipping away at Eastbourne. And then, at 21, standing across the net from Naomi Osaka in Washington and playing so well that the former world number 1 walks into a press conference afterward and calls her an inspiration. None of this happened overnight. The path was built one result at a time. But in Washington, the progress suddenly became impossible to ignore. The final itself didn't deliver the storybook ending Eala's supporters wanted. Rain interrupted play on Sunday, pushing the conclusion into Monday. And when competition resumed, Jessica Pegula showed exactly why she is ranked among the best players in the world, closing out the championship 6-4, 6-2. The trophy went to Pegula. But the loss didn't erase everything Eala had already accomplished during the week. Before the final, Eala reflected on how much she had grown over the previous year, saying she had developed significantly and was now more experienced in handling moments like this. After beating Osaka, she reportedly wrote on Instagram that she had enjoyed every minute she spent on the court. That perspective matters. 13 months earlier, she had been 2 points away from a title and watched the opportunity disappear in a championship tiebreak. Now she had reached a WTA 500 final in the capital of the United States after beating a brutal series of opponents. 1 hour to sell out the final. 6 straight games to complete the comeback against Fernandez. 4 converted breakpoints against Osaka. A 6th top 10 victory of the season against Svitolina. And 1 unforgettable sentence from a 4-time major champion: "I think she's a star." Pegula took home the trophy, and she earned it. But the piece of history attached to becoming the first Filipina to reach a WTA 500 final belongs permanently to Alex Eala. For every Filipino fan who spent the last few years hearing that Eala was developing too slowly, that her ranking told the whole story, or that painful losses exposed some kind of ceiling, Washington delivered an answer. The conversation around Alex Eala is changing. She is no longer simply a promising young player people are waiting to see breakthrough. Former champions are praising her. American arenas are filling with Filipino fans. Elite players are taking her seriously. And the biggest tournaments on the calendar are suddenly looking a lot more interesting. So now the question becomes even bigger. When Alex Eala arrives in New York for the US Open, potentially as a seeded player for the first time, how far can she actually go? Is a quarterfinal run realistic before this season is over? Could she go even deeper? Put your prediction in the comments and be specific. Tell us exactly what round you think Alex Eala reaches at the US Open and why. And if you've been following this rise since before Miami, before Wimbledon, and before Washington turned into a Filipino home court, subscribe and put your prediction on the record now. Because if this week proved anything, it's that the Alex Eala story is moving a whole lot faster than the tennis world expected.